Behind the shimmering thrones of Europe lies a dynasty cloaked in mystery, ambition, and buried secrets, the House of Lorraine. More than just a noble bloodline, this family carved its name into the core of continental power, intrigue, and imperial legacy. Emerging from the cadet branch of the House of Metz, the Lorraines officially took control of the Duchy of Lorraine in 1473, and from there, their influence only grew. But beyond the grandeur lies a hidden world, whispers of assassination plots, secret heirs born of forbidden affairs, religious persecution shrouded in diplomatic fog. Figures like René II, Francis I, and Marie Antoinette shaped the fate of nations. Yet beneath their regal portraits may lie stories deliberately erased from official chronicles. In this episode, we unlock the unseen chapters, the hidden children, the covert marriages, the dangerous alliances, stories long buried beneath coats of arms and marble tombs. Get ready to explore a dynasty where power was never just about blood. It was about what remained hidden. Welcome to the shadowed history of the House of Lorraine. From new money to old money. The Lorraine Duke's feudal wealth was indeed new money, much like Mary Brickell's pioneering frontier ventures in early Miami, deeply rooted in medieval landholdings that emphasized raw opportunity and expansion. Mary Brickell, often hailed as the mother of Miami, arrived in Florida with her husband William in 1871, acquiring vast tracts of undeveloped swampland for minimal cost and transforming them through sheer determination into the bustling financial district that bears her name today. Her efforts involved clearing dense vegetation, building roads, and establishing settlements in a harsh, untamed environment, relying on vision, labor, and strategic land deals rather than established prestige or inherited titles. In a parallel fashion, the House of Lorraine emerged as a cadet branch of the House of Metz in the 11th century, securing the Duchy of Lorraine in 1473 upon the death of Nicholas I without a male heir. Their initial fortune was built on extensive estates in the region now known as Eastern France, encompassing fertile farmlands, dense forests teeming with game and timber, and abundant natural resources that provided a foundation for economic growth. This wealth was not the polished inheritance of ancient nobility, but a product of gritty, hands-on acquisition through military conquests, territorial disputes, and astute inheritances amid the turbulent landscape of the Middle Ages. Knights loyal to the dukes clashed in battles to expand borders, while diplomatic maneuvers within the fragmented Holy Roman Empire allowed them to consolidate power, much like Brickell's transformation of mosquito-plagued wilderness into prosperous urban developments that attracted investors and settlers, embodying that pure new money spirit of self-made success through perseverance and innovation. As the centuries unfolded, the House of Lorraine underwent a remarkable transition to old money status, a multifaceted process driven by deliberate strategies that elevated them to enduring elite status among Europe's aristocracy. At the heart of this evolution stood the dynastic power forged through key alliances, most notably Francis I's marriage to Maria Theresa, a union that dramatically expanded their influence and rivaled the Habsburgs' vast imperial reach. In 1736, Francis, then Duke of Lorraine, married Maria Theresa, the heiress to the Habsburg domains, in a grand ceremony at Vienna's Augustinian Church, marking a pivotal alliance born from the War of the Polish Succession's diplomatic settlements. As part of the arrangement, Francis relinquished his claim to Lorraine in exchange for the Grand Duchy of Tuscany, but this sacrifice paved the way for his election as Holy Roman Emperor in 1745. Together, he and Maria Theresa co-ruled expansive territories until the empire's dissolution in 1806, with their descendants maintaining control over Austria-Hungary until its collapse in 1918, following World War I. This marriage was akin to a monumental corporate merger, combining Lorraine's regional strengths with the Habsburgs' continental dominance, extending their sway across Central and Eastern Europe. Maria Theresa, a formidable and reform-minded sovereign who had harbored affection for Francis since childhood, contributed the Habsburgs' entrenched authority and administrative prowess, while Francis infused the partnership with Lorraine's tactical acumen and resilience. The couple produced 16 children, among them the ill-fated Marie Antoinette, who later became Queen of France. And this prolific lineage ensured the dynasty's continuity. The strategy mirrored the Habsburgs' long-standing tradition of building empires through matrimonial diplomacy rather than solely through warfare, embedding the Lorraines firmly in the old money realm of hereditary monarchies, where generational legacy overshadowed immediate gains. This shift was further enriched by their extensive art and cultural patronage in the Grand Duchy of Tuscany, which echoed Gertrude Vanderbilt Whitney's enduring legacy in establishing a major museum. Whitney, a prominent sculptor and philanthropist from the Vanderbilt family, founded the Whitney Museum of American Art in 1930, dedicating it to the promotion of contemporary American artists at a time when European influences dominated the scene. She invested heavily in acquiring and exhibiting works, resulting in a collection that has grown to over 25,000 pieces, fostering a new era of artistic independence in the United States. In a similar vein, the House of Lorraine assumed control of Tuscany in 1737 and quickly established themselves as enlightened patrons of the arts and sciences. Francis Stephen, serving as Grand Duke, along with successors such as Leopold II, channeled significant resources into cultural endeavors, preserving and augmenting the renowned Medici collections that included masterpieces from Renaissance giants like Michelangelo, Raphael, and Botticelli. Under their stewardship, the Uffizi Gallery in Florence not only maintained its status as a premier art repository, but also expanded with additions, such as the Lorraine collection of scientific instruments, now housed at the Museo Galileo, featuring intricate globes, astrolabes, telescopes, and other artifacts that highlighted advancements in astronomy and physics. Leopold II, who reigned from 1824 to 1859, exemplified this patronage through his progressive reforms, which extended beyond art to include educational initiatives and agricultural improvements, all while supporting local artists, writers, and scholars. This was no mere extravagance. It was a calculated investment in cultural capital that enhanced their prestige, attracted intellectuals, and ensured a lasting impact that transcended political upheavals. Much like Whitney's museum revolutionized the American art world by shifting focus from imitation to innovation and originality. Strategic matrimonial alliances wove even deeper threads into this tapestry, connecting the Lorraines with powerful houses such as the Habsburgs, Bourbons, and Guises, in a manner that mirrored Aristotle Onassis's calculated ties to elite circles. Onassis, the self-made Greek shipping tycoon who amassed a fortune through bold maritime ventures, strategically married Athina Livanos in 1946, the daughter of a competing shipping magnate, to consolidate industry power, and later Jacqueline Kennedy in 1968. Linking his newfound wealth to American political and social royalty, thereby elevating his status from outsider to insider among the global elite. The Lorraines excelled in this arena, with branches like Vaudemont and Guise weaving intricate marital webs with French nobility. The Guise line, descending from Lorraine origins, played a prominent role in the French Wars of Religion, where leaders like François de Guise orchestrated anti-Protestant campaigns and court intrigues. Key unions included Christine of Lorraine's marriage to Ferdinando de' Medici in 1589, which introduced Lorraine lineage into the Tuscan ruling family and facilitated the eventual inheritance of the duchy. The cornerstone alliance, of course, was Francis's wedding to Maria Theresa, which seamlessly integrated Lorraine into the Habsburg fold. These marriages were far from sentimental. They were instruments for territorial security and political stability, as seen in the 1612 to 1615 double marriages between Habsburg and Bourbon branches that temporarily alleviated long-standing rivalries between Spain and France by fostering familial bonds. Through such elite networking, the Lorraines converted their family lineage into a robust power network, propelling them from regional players to continental influencers, just as Onassis's unions bridged his entrepreneurial origins to aristocratic spheres. The accumulation of imperial revenues from the Austrian Empire added yet another layer of solidity to their position, rivaling the expansive media empire built by William Randolph Hearst. Hearst, a publishing mogul, constructed a fortune equivalent to $200 million in modern terms by the 1930s, controlling 28 newspapers, numerous radio stations, and a film production company that wielded immense sway over public opinion, politics, and entertainment. Following the 1736 marriage, the Lorraines accessed the Habsburgs' imperial coffers, including taxes, mining royalties from silver and salt deposits, and income from sprawling estates. As emperors of the Holy Roman Empire and later sovereigns of Austria-Hungary, they imposed levies on a diverse populace across Central Europe, encompassing tolls on trade routes, customs duties at borders, and agricultural tributes from peasant farmers. By the 19th century, the Austrian Empire's annual budget had swelled to approximately 150 million florins, bolstered by Maria Theresa's centralizing financial reforms that streamlined tax collection and reduced corruption. These funds supported opulent royal courts, military campaigns, and infrastructural projects, akin to how Hearst financed his extravagant Hearst Castle at San Simeon and pursued senatorial ambitions. However, in contrast to Hearst's reliance on sensationalist yellow journalism that often prioritized scandal over substance, the Lorraines directed their wealth towards sustainable investments in roads, canals, and educational institutions, ensuring a perpetual stream of revenue that endured across generations. Yet religious and political scandals persistently challenged their legitimacy, much like the enduring stigma attached to Edward Doheny from the Teapot Dome affair. Doheny, an influential oil magnate in the early 20th century, became embroiled in the 1920s scandal involving bribes to government officials for exclusive oil drilling leases on federal lands, which irreparably damaged his reputation despite his later charitable contributions to universities and causes. The Lorraines encountered analogous controversies that cast shadows over their rule. In the French Wars of Religion spanning 1562 to 1598, the Guise faction spearheaded Catholic League efforts, including the suppression of Protestant plots during the 1559 to 1562 turmoil, where they employed brutal tactics to maintain dominance. François de Guise infamously led the massacre of Huguenots at Vassy in 1562, an event that ignited widespread conflict and deepened religious divisions. Centuries later, Philippe known as the Chevalier de Lorraine, fueled salacious court scandals at Versailles, with accusations of poisoning adversaries and engaging in scandalous affairs that disrupted Louis XIV's inner circle and provoked royal displeasure. Politically, the Duchy of Lorraine served as a volatile buffer zone between Bourbon France and the Habsburgs, enduring repeated occupations, such as the prolonged period from 1624 to 1737, marked by internal factional strife and external interventions that fragmented governance. These episodes repeatedly called into question the family's authority and moral standing, similar to how Dohany's corruption eroded public trust, yet the Lorraines demonstrated resilience by leveraging diplomatic negotiations and alliances to regain stability and reaffirm their position. Underpinning the Lorraine fortune was a diverse array of assets that provided both immediate wealth and long-term security, ranging from grand estates to thriving trade networks and cultural treasures. Prominent among these were properties like Nancy's Ducal Palace and Luneville Chateau, which served as symbols of authority and luxury. The Ducal Palace in Nancy, constructed in the 16th century in the wake of the decisive Battle of Nancy that secured Lorraine's independence, functioned as the primary residence for the dukes until Duke Leopold's relocation. This architectural masterpiece in Renaissance style featured elaborate gates adorned with sculptures, towering structures for defense and display, and interior halls that hosted diplomatic gatherings. Today it houses the Lorraine Museum, displaying a vast array of artifacts, ranging from prehistoric tools to World War I memorabilia, preserving the region's historical narrative. Complementing it was Luneville Chateau, often called the Versailles of Lorraine, which Leopold rebuilt between 1702 and 1720 as a serene retreat located about 35 kilometers southeast of Nancy. The chateau boasted expansive formal gardens inspired by French landscape design, private theaters for performances, and salons that welcomed Enlightenment thinkers, such as Voltaire, who resided there intermittently. Although devastated by a fire in 2003, it has since been meticulously restored, retaining its role as a testament to ducal splendor. Far beyond mere residences, these estates functioned as administrative hubs, venues for courtly rituals, and fortifications that projected power and facilitated governance. Economic vitality flowed from Lorraine's thriving textile and salt trade sectors, which generated substantial income. Salt extraction in areas like Guise traced its origins to Gallo-Roman eras, with operations that continue to supply nearly half of France's salt production in contemporary times, utilizing ancient evaporation techniques adapted over centuries. The textile industry prospered in the Vosges Mountains, where wool and linen mills capitalized on local sheep farming and flax cultivation, producing high-quality fabrics for domestic use and export. Under the Duke's oversight, these trades expanded through protected monopolies and infrastructure improvements, exporting goods across Europe and supplementing feudal dues with reliable commercial profits that bolstered the duchy's treasury. Adding to this were the invaluable cultural assets inherited from the Medici art collections in Tuscany. Upon assuming Tuscany in 1737, the Lorraines acquired the Uffizi Gallery's treasures, including iconic works by Michelangelo, Raphael, Leonardo da Vinci, and others, safeguarded by the Family Pact of 1737 that mandated their perpetual retention in Florence to prevent dispersal. They enriched this hoard with personal acquisitions, such as rare Russian icons, precious gems, and antiquities, establishing Tuscany as a premier destination for art connoisseurs and scholars, thereby cultivating an aura of refined sophistication. Sustaining the empire were imperial taxes and Tuscan agricultural outputs, as the Habsburg-Lorraine monarchs imposed comprehensive taxation systems throughout their domains, collecting revenues that financed military forces, royal households, and public works. In Tuscany specifically, Leopold's reforms revolutionized farming by introducing drainage systems for marshlands, promoting crop rotation for grains, olives, and vineyards, and implementing free trade policies that stimulated production and export, dramatically increasing agricultural yields and contributing to overall prosperity. Unlike the Vanderbilts' squandered estates, the Lorraine assets transitioned seamlessly to the Habsburg-Lorraine line, echoing the prudent trusts established by Andrew Mellon. The Vanderbilts, originating from Cornelius Vanderbilt's groundbreaking $100 million railroad empire in 1877, equivalent to billions today, dissipated their wealth through extravagant constructions like the Biltmore Estate and lavish lifestyles involving yachts, parties, and speculative ventures. By the 1920s, poor financial decisions and economic downturns had eroded the fortune, leaving no Vanderbilt among America's wealthiest by 1978. In stark contrast, the Mellons safeguarded their assets through sophisticated trusts. Andrew Mellon, who served as U.S. Treasury Secretary from 1921 to 1932, structured financial vehicles that perpetuated his banking and industrial holdings, growing them into multi-billion-dollar entities and funding enduring institutions like the Mellon Foundation, which supports arts, education, and research to this day. Likewise, the Lorraine's holdings, estates, trades, cultural treasures, and revenues were integrated into the Habsburg-Lorraine framework via matrimonial agreements and legal pacts, maintaining their vitality through careful management that preserved art collections, land productivity, and income streams well beyond the fall of monarchies. Modern descendants, including Karl von Habsburg, continue to uphold this heritage by advocating for cultural conservation and European unity, ensuring the dynasty's influence persists in contemporary society. René II's secret forged Carolingian ancestry. René II, Duke of Lorraine, ruled during the late 15th century, a period when his military triumphs and political acumen earned him a prominent place in the history of medieval Europe. His decisive victory at the Battle of Nancy in 1477 against Charles the Bold of Burgundy cemented his reputation as a formidable leader in a region fraught with tension. Yet beneath the celebrated narrative of his reign lies a lesser-known and deeply controversial episode: the deliberate fabrication of a Carolingian ancestry in the 1480s. This was not a minor embellishment or a misunderstanding born of ambiguous records, but a calculated act of genealogical invention designed to elevate his dynastic legitimacy. By claiming descent from the revered dynasty of Charlemagne, René sought to transform his image from that of a regional noble into a figure of imperial and divine significance, cloaking his rule in a mythos that resonated across Christian Europe. In late medieval Europe, political authority rested on more than military might or administrative skill. It required a compelling narrative of legitimacy. A ruler's lineage was not merely a record of ancestry, but a sacred endorsement, tying their rule to divine providence. No dynasty carried greater symbolic weight than the Carolingians, whose founder Charlemagne was crowned Holy Roman Emperor in 800 AD, establishing a model of Christian kingship that endured for centuries. To claim Carolingian descent was to assert a spiritual and imperial inheritance, a connection that could unify territories, inspire loyalty, and deter rivals. For René, whose Duchy of Lorraine sat precariously between the Holy Roman Empire, France, and Burgundy, such a narrative was essential. Lorraine's strategic position made it a target of competing powers, and while René's victory at Nancy demonstrated his strength, it was not enough to secure his rule in a world where divine right and historical prestige were paramount. By forging a Carolingian lineage, René crafted a story that positioned him as the heir to a sacred imperial tradition, shielding his duchy from external threats and internal dissent. The fabrication of this ancestry was executed with remarkable precision in the 1480s, when a series of documents began to circulate asserting that the House of Lorraine was a direct descendant of the Carolingians. The most significant of these was the Stemmatum Lotharingiae, a genealogical treatise produced under the auspices of René's court. This document was not a vague or symbolic claim, but a detailed and confident lineage, complete with genealogical charts, sequential names, and specific accounts of marriages and inheritances stretching back to Charlemagne. Yet these claims were entirely fictitious. The marriages described in the treatise are absent from contemporary records, and many of the individuals named as ancestors cannot be found in baptismal, coronation, or funeral documents of the period. Entire generations were invented, serving as convenient bridges to connect historical figures who shared no familial ties. Some ancestors were placed in regions or time periods that made their inclusion in the Lorraine lineage implausible, revealing the document as a work of invention rather than history. This fabrication was not the work of amateurs, but a sophisticated operation undertaken by royal secretaries, clerics, chroniclers, and heraldic experts who understood the symbolic power of lineage. Written in formal Latin and adorned with the seals and flourishes of official court records, the Stemmatum Lotharingii was designed to appear authoritative and unimpeachable. It was circulated among nobles, clergy, and foreign courts, ensuring its acceptance as a definitive account of Lorraine's heritage. The effort required a deep understanding of genealogical conventions and historical records, as well as the ability to craft a narrative that aligned with the expectations of medieval audiences. To further ensure its dominance, René's court took steps to suppress alternative genealogies. Manuscripts that might have contradicted the fabricated lineage were excluded from official archives or allowed to deteriorate, and dissenting voices were marginalized or silenced. This control over the historical record transformed the Stemmatum Lotharingiae into the sole reference for Lorraine's ancestry, endorsed by both court and clergy. The geopolitical context of Lorraine explains why René resorted to such an audacious strategy. Caught between the ambitions of France, Burgundy, and the Holy Roman Empire, Lorraine was a small but strategically vital territory. France, under Louis XI and later Charles VIII, sought to expand its influence eastward, while Burgundy, under Charles the Bold, viewed Lorraine as a key component of its imperial project. The Holy Roman Empire, meanwhile, claimed nominal overlordship, complicating Lorraine's autonomy. René's victory at Nancy had secured his rule against Burgundy, but ongoing threats required a broader strategy to assert his legitimacy. By claiming Carolingian descent, René positioned himself as a figure of imperial significance, appealing to the sensibilities of the Holy Roman Empire, which revered Charlemagne as its founding emperor, and the Church, which viewed him as a champion of Christian unity. This narrative strengthened alliances, deterred aggression, and secured ecclesiastical support, reinforcing René's authority in a volatile region. The fabrication was not unique in European dynastic history, as other rulers had embellished their lineages to claim descent from legendary figures. However, the scale and sophistication of René's effort set it apart. Unlike fleeting or secretive forgeries, the Stemmatum Lotharingiae was a public and authoritative document that shaped perceptions of Lorraine's ruling house for decades. Its success depended on the limited access to historical records in the late 15th century, when few had the resources to challenge an official narrative. In an era when memory and tradition held greater sway than empirical evidence, a well-crafted story could become an accepted truth. The Stemmatum Lotharingiae was presented with such confidence and supported by such prestigious institutions that it went largely unchallenged, even by those who might have suspected its inaccuracies. The truth began to unravel centuries later, as modern historical scholarship gained access to preserved archives, church records, and independent genealogical data. Inconsistencies in the Stemmatum Lotharingiae became apparent. Names could not be corroborated, marriages were absent from contemporary sources, and some ancestors were found to have lived in unrelated regions or time periods. Dates, titles, and geographic placements revealed further contradictions, exposing the document as a fabrication. Yet this exposure did not diminish René's historical significance, but rather enriched it, revealing him as a master of narrative manipulation who understood the power of myth in shaping political reality. René's fabrication reflects a broader truth about the nature of power. Rule is built not only on armies or wealth, but also on the ability to craft and sustain a compelling story. By rewriting his family's past, René redefined its present and future, positioning himself as the heir to an imperial legacy. This act of memory control was as strategic as any military campaign, demonstrating that history is a contested space shaped by those with the resources to write it. The long silence surrounding the fabrication, whether due to the skill of its execution or the suppression of dissent, underscores the fragility of historical truth in an era before modern archival practices. In the absence of centralized records or rigorous historical methods, a ruler with sufficient determination could impose a new version of the past. Today, René's fabricated Carolingian ancestry is a footnote in his broader legacy, overshadowed by his military victories and political achievements. Yet, it remains a compelling case study in the interplay of power, narrative, and history. His actions reveal a timeless impulse, the desire to reshape the past to serve the needs of the present. Whether through forged documents, suppressed records, or curated myths, the manipulation of history is a strategy as old as power itself. In an age of digital archives and global connectivity, the tools of historical manipulation have evolved, but the impulse remains unchanged. René's story, though exposed, endures as a testament to the enduring power of narrative in the construction of authority, inviting reflection on how the past continues to be shaped to serve the needs of those who write it. Charles IV's secret exile and hidden heirs. In the turbulent landscape of 17th century Europe, where empires clashed and dynasties fought to preserve their legacies, the story of Charles IV of Lorraine emerges as a saga of resilience, exile, and carefully guarded secrets. Born in April 1604, Charles IV, sometimes referred to as Charles III in certain records, was a duke whose life was shaped by relentless struggles against French domination, a series of military campaigns, and intricate political alliances that stretched from the courts of Spain to the battlefields of the Holy Roman Empire. His reign over the Duchy of Lorraine, a small but strategically vital territory nestled between France, the Holy Roman Empire, and the Spanish Netherlands, was marked by constant threats from greater powers, particularly the ambitious France of Cardinal Richelieu and Louis XIV. Yet beyond the well-documented battles and diplomatic maneuvers lies a deeply personal and clandestine chapter of Charles's life. The story of his secret children with Béatrix de Cusance, born during his exile and concealed to protect the fragile legitimacy of his dynastic claim. This narrative, woven with threads of love, scandal, and political necessity, offers a profound glimpse into the delicate balance of power and survival in a world where legitimacy was everything. Charles ascended to the ducal throne of Lorraine in 1624 at the age of 20, the son of Francis II, and a product of a world where dynastic politics were as perilous as any military campaign. Lorraine's geographic position made it a coveted prize, a crossroads of competing ambitions that left it vulnerable to external aggression. France, under the iron hand of Cardinal Richelieu, sought to centralize its power, viewing semi-independent duchies like Lorraine as obstacles to its vision of a unified kingdom. Charles's early reign was shaped by this tension, compounded by a marriage to his cousin Nicole de Lorraine in 1621. Intended to strengthen dynastic ties, the union produced no children, a fact that would later cast a shadow over the succession. In 1625, a brief but significant dynastic maneuver added further complexity. Charles's father, Francis II, claimed the throne, abolished female succession, and then abdicated just 5 days later in favor of Charles, solidifying his position as duke. This act, while securing Charles's rule, foreshadowed the dynastic tensions that would define his reign, as the absence of legitimate heirs loomed large. By the early 1630s, Charles's political decisions had placed him in direct conflict with France. His support for opponents of the French crown, including his decision to shelter Gaston d'Orléans, the rebellious brother of King Louis XIII, was a bold challenge to Richelieu's authority. France's response was swift and unforgiving. In 1633, French forces invaded Lorraine, seizing the capital, Nancy, and asserting control over the duchy. By 1634, Charles was forced to abdicate in favor of his brother Nicolas François and fled into exile, stripped of his lands and titles. His marriage to Nicole, already strained by the lack of heirs, unraveled further during this period. In 1635, Charles sought to annul the marriage, hoping to free himself from its constraints. But the papacy, cautious of setting a precedent that could destabilize other noble unions, refused. Exiled, estranged, and increasingly isolated, Charles threw himself into the service of the imperial army during the 30 Years' War, a sprawling conflict that ravaged Europe and provided a stage for his continued defiance. It was in the crucible of exile, in 1634, that Charles's life took a transformative turn. Amid the chaos of war and displacement, he encountered Béatrix de Cusance, Baroness of Belvoir, and de Saint-Julien. Born in 1614, Béatrix was a woman of remarkable intelligence and fortitude, hailing from an influential family with deep roots in the Franche-Comté. Her first marriage, arranged by her mother in 1635 to Leopold Eugène Perrenot de Granvelle, was a strategic alliance aimed at securing political and social standing. But Granvelle's death in early 1637 left Béatrix a widow at the age of 22. Her meeting with Charles, a charismatic and embattled duke, ignited a romance that defied the conventions of their time. On April 9, 1637, just 9 days after Granvelle's death, Béatrix signed a marriage contract with Charles, a daring move given his unresolved marriage to Nicole. 6 months later, she gave birth to their first child, a son named Joseph, whom Charles proudly acknowledged. The joy of this birth was fleeting. Joseph died in February 1638. Less than a year old, a loss that deepened the challenges facing their union. The relationship between Charles and Beatrix was no fleeting affair, but a profound partnership forged in the fires of adversity. Beatrix was not content to remain in the background. She accompanied Charles on his military campaigns, her presence a testament to their shared commitment. Contemporary accounts paint a vivid picture of her riding into the field, armor worn over her dress, a striking symbol of resilience in a male-dominated world. Yet their union was fraught with obstacles. The Catholic Church, bound by the sanctity of Charles's first marriage to Nicole, refused to recognize their marriage, declaring it bigamous. In 1642, both Charles and Beatrix were excommunicated, a severe sanction that deepened their isolation from the Catholic establishment and complicated their personal and political lives. Despite these challenges, their bond endured. In August 1639, Beatrix gave birth to a daughter, Anne, whom Charles also acknowledged. The pressures of excommunication and Charles's military obligations forced a physical separation, but their connection remained unbroken. Years later, after Nicole's death in 1657, Charles and Beatrix sought to legitimize their union, remarrying by procuration in May 1663. Tragically, Beatrix died just 15 days later, leaving Charles to grieve the loss of his partner and the mother of his children. The children born to Charles and Beatrix, Joseph, Anne, and later Charles, Henri, born in April 1649, posed a significant threat to the dynastic stability of Lorraine. Because their marriage was not recognized by the Church, these children were deemed illegitimate and barred from the line of succession. Their very existence, however, was a potential spark that could ignite challenges to the duchy's future. During much of Charles's exile, Lorraine was under French occupation. Its capital, Nancy, controlled by Louis XIV's forces, publicly acknowledging illegitimate children, particularly those recognized by Charles, risked inviting French claims to annex the duchy or provoking internal rivalries from other branches of the Lorraine family. To safeguard his claim and maintain the illusion of an unbroken dynastic line, Charles and his court adopted a strategy of silence. The births of Anne and Charles Henri were not recorded in official chronicles, their names carefully omitted from ducal documents. Among the elites of Europe and in the occupied courts of Nancy, their existence was known only in hushed tones, a secret too dangerous to be openly acknowledged. Charles's life in exile was a relentless quest to reclaim his duchy. After his abdication in 1634, he fought alongside the imperial army, later aligning with Spain during the Fronde, a series of civil wars in France that offered a fleeting opportunity to weaken French control. His defiance came at a steep price. From 1654 to 1659, Charles was imprisoned by Spanish authorities, a bitter twist for a man who had sought their alliance. Released in 1659, he negotiated his return to Lorraine in 1661 under a treaty that demanded significant concessions to Louis XIV. The duchy was restored, but its autonomy was severely limited, and Charles remained under constant pressure from the French crown. His children with Beatrix, Anne, and Charles Henri were never recognized as dynasts, and the ducal succession passed to the line of his brother Nicolas François. Anne, born in 1639, married her cousin François-Marie de Lorraine Elbeuf in 1660, finding a place within the extended Lorraine family. Charles Henri, born in 1649, became Prince de Vaudemont and Commercy, serving as a general in Spanish service, a path that took him far from the ducal throne. Their lives, though significant in elite circles, were carefully excluded from official records, ensuring that the dynastic line remained unchallenged. The concealment of Charles's children was not an act of personal rejection, but a strategic necessity rooted in the broader patterns of European dynastic politics. Across the continent, noble families grappled with the challenge of illegitimate offspring whose existence could disrupt carefully constructed lines of succession. The Grimaldis of Monaco, for example, quietly settled claims of unacknowledged heirs through marriage or exile, while the Trastamara monarchs of Spain navigated the threats posed by spurious offspring. In Lorraine, the stakes were uniquely high. The duchy's survival as a semi-independent entity depended on maintaining a narrative of legitimacy that could withstand French aggression and internal rivalries. Acknowledging Anne and Charles Henri as heirs, even privately, risked inviting French annexation or emboldening rival claimants within the Lorraine family. The court's silence was a deliberate shield, protecting Charles's claim against the vulnerabilities of exile and excommunication. Charles's efforts to reclaim Lorraine were marked by persistence and frustration. He briefly returned to power in 1641 under a treaty, only to face renewed French pressure, leading to another abdication in 1662 under the stringent terms of the Treaty of Montmartre. This agreement forced him to cede effective control of Lorraine while retaining nominal sovereignty and a pension from Louis XIV, styling himself a Prince du Sang, a prince of royal blood. Yet France reoccupied Lorraine in 1670, plunging Charles into a second exile. He continued to fight, aligning with anti-French coalitions and leading troops until his death in September 1675, shortly after a victorious battle at Caen. In his final moments, Charles carried the titles of a duke without a duchy, a man whose dreams of restoration remained unfulfilled. His children, Anne and Charles Henri, remained in the shadows, their names absent from the official chronicles of Lorraine's succession. The effectiveness of Charles's concealment strategy is evident in its near-total success during his lifetime. Political memory was tightly controlled by his court, a necessity in an era when information was scarce and official narratives held immense power. Even Nicole, Charles's first wife, spent her final years lobbying European courts, particularly Rome, to validate her rights as wife and sovereign. Her efforts were futile. She died in exile in 1657, her claims unresolved. While Nicole fought for recognition, Charles and Beatrix's union operated in the shadows, their children known but never acknowledged in a way that could threaten the duchy. Beatrix's own writings, letters, and personal correspondence, preserved in scattered archives, reveal her devotion to Charles and her acute awareness of the precarious position their children occupied. These documents, alongside diplomatic files from the courts of Spain, the Holy Roman Empire, and France, confirm the existence of Anne and Charles Henri, but also the deliberate effort to keep them out of the public eye. The story of Charles IV's secret children is not an isolated case in the annals of European dynasties, but it stands out for its completeness and the high stakes involved. The Grimaldis, Trastamaras, and other noble houses faced similar dilemmas, but in Lorraine, the concealment was a masterstroke of dynastic preservation. The papacy's refusal to legitimize Charles's marriage to Beatrix until after Nicole's death, and Beatrix's own death shortly thereafter, ensured that Anne and Charles Henri remained in dynastic limbo, known privately but excluded publicly. Their lives, though significant in elite circles, never disrupted the official succession, which passed to Charles's niece and the line of Nicolas François. This hidden chapter of Charles's life illuminates the intricate interplay of power, scandal, and survival in 17th century Europe. It is the story of a duke who, stripped of his lands by France, fought to preserve his claim through military alliances, diplomatic treaties, and the meticulous management of his family's narrative. The existence of Joseph, Anne, and Charles Henri, born to Beatrix de Couzance, was a truth Charles could acknowledge in private, but never in public. Their concealment was not a denial of fatherhood, but a denial of threat, a strategy to safeguard Lorraine's future against the relentless ambitions of Louis XIV. The duchy survived, its claims remained intact, and the secret lineage faded from official records, preserved only in the margins of history. Beatrix's letters, diplomatic correspondence, and the quiet lives of Anne and Charles Henri. Guise family's secret assassination plot against Henri III. In the waning years of the 16th century, France stood on the brink of collapse, torn apart by religious strife and political turmoil during the Wars of Religion. At the heart of this chaos was the House of Guise, a powerful noble family and cadet branch of the Duchy of Lorraine, whose ambition drove them to a clandestine plot so audacious it could have reshaped the French monarchy. This was no mere rebellion or bid for influence. The Guise schemed to assassinate King Henri III, seize the throne, and install a regime aligned with their ultra-Catholic vision. The year was 1588, a time when the kingdom was fractured by the clash between Catholics and Protestants, and the Valois dynasty, long the ruling house of France, teetered on the edge of extinction. The Guises' plot, meticulously planned but carefully concealed, was buried in silence after a brutal royal counterstrike. Yet its echoes linger in the margins of history, a testament to the lengths to which a noble family would go to claim power, and the power of secrecy to shape historical memory. The House of Guise, rooted in the lineage of Lorraine, had risen to prominence through a potent combination of wealth, military prowess, and fervent Catholicism. By the 1580s, they were the leading figures of the Catholic League, a powerful faction dedicated to preserving Catholic dominance in France against the rising tide of Protestantism. The prospect of Henri of Navarre, a Protestant and the heir apparent to the childless Henri III, ascending the throne, was anathema to the Guise and their allies. Navarre's potential succession threatened not only their religious ideals but also their political influence, as the Valois line neared its end. By 1584, this fear had galvanized the Guise into action. In the city of Nancy, their ancestral stronghold, they convened a meeting that would set the stage for their boldest move yet. There, they declared their intent to exclude Navarre from the throne, a decision that marked the beginning of a conspiracy far more radical than mere opposition. The Guise were not content to challenge the succession through rhetoric or influence. They sought to reshape the monarchy itself. In December 1584, the Guise took a critical step toward their goal by signing the secret Treaty of Joinville with Philip II of Spain. This clandestine agreement secured Spanish financial and political support for the Catholic League in exchange for influence over its actions and, potentially, over a future France under Guise control. The treaty was a masterstroke of diplomacy, aligning the Guise with one of Europe's most powerful monarchs while providing the resources needed to build a formidable network. They began organizing in earnest, arming their supporters, rallying key cities such as Paris, Champagne, and Normandy, and consolidating their control over the League. The House of Guise emerged as the undisputed center of this ultra-Catholic movement, wielding not just influence but tangible power. Their leaders, Henri, Duke of Guise, and his brother Cardinal Louis of Guise, were charismatic and ambitious. Their family's lineage steeped in claims of ancient nobility, with some even tracing their heritage back to Charlemagne to bolster their legitimacy. This genealogical narrative, though exaggerated, resonated deeply in a Catholic Europe that revered such connections as signs of divine favor. The tensions between Guise and Henri III reached a boiling point in May 1588 during an event that would become known as the Day of the Barricades in Paris. The city, a stronghold of Catholic League support, erupted in unrest as crowds rose against the crown, erecting barricades to challenge royal authority. Henri, Duke of Guise, rode through the streets unarmed, a calculated display of courage and leadership that calmed the volatile crowds and solidified his status as a hero of the Catholic cause. His actions humiliated Henri III, who fled Paris, leaving the city under the de facto control of the Guise. This moment marked a turning point as the Duke of Guise openly defied the king, asserting his dominance in a way that bordered on treason. At the Estates General convened later that year in Blois, he further provoked Henri III, browbeating him in public and toasting his brother, Cardinal Louis, as a potential king during a lavish banquet. In a particularly brazen gesture, he joked with his sister about tonsuring Henri III and forcing him into a monastery, a humiliating fate for a king. These acts were not mere provocations. They were the prelude to a far more dangerous plan taking shape in the shadows. Beneath the public displays of defiance, the Guise were orchestrating a conspiracy that went beyond political pressure or military posturing. Correspondence within the House of Guise and their inner circle reveals a plot to assassinate Henri III and seize the throne, either for Henri, Duke of Guise, or for Cardinal Charles de Bourbon, a figurehead supported by the League. The plan was not openly declared. No pamphlet or public manifesto outlined their intentions, as such a move would have invited immediate retribution. Instead, the Guise operated with meticulous secrecy, gathering arms, securing the loyalty of key cities, and marshalling support among nobles, courtiers, and commoners. Their aim was clear: remove the king, eliminate his closest advisors, and install a pro-League monarchy that would cement Catholic dominance and Guise power. Paris, with its fervent Catholic population and strategic importance, was to be the linchpin of this coup, a city ready to fall into their hands once the king was dispatched. On the night of December 22, 1588, a warning reached Henri, Duke of Guise, slipped under his napkin during a meal. The note cautioned that a plot was afoot against him, but the Duke, confident in his power and popularity, dismissed it with a cavalier remark scrawled on the paper, "None would dare." His arrogance would prove fatal. The following day, December 23rd, he was summoned to a council meeting at the Château de Blois, where Henri III awaited. As the Duke approached the king's chambers, the 45, Henri's elite guard, ambushed him in a side chamber. They stabbed him repeatedly, and he fell, his body left lifeless on the floor. The king's strike was swift and ruthless, designed to decapitate the Guise leadership. Hours later, Cardinal Louis of Guise was arrested and executed, his death ensuring that the League's spiritual and political leadership was crippled in a single blow. To prevent the Guise from becoming martyrs, Henri ordered their bodies burned and their ashes scattered into the Loire River, erasing the possibility of shrines or relics that could rally their supporters. The king's gambit was clear: eliminate the threat and erase its memory. Yet the assassinations at Blois did not end the Guises' ambitions. They merely buried the most audacious part of their plan. The conspiracy to kill Henri III and seize the throne was never publicly acknowledged, its details suppressed in a collective silence that enveloped both the Guise and the royal court. After the murders, Guise correspondents ceased to mention the plot, and references to vengeance or regime change vanish from their records. The League's public narrative shifted, framing the Guise as defenders of the Catholic faith, victims of a tyrannical king who had committed the sacrilegious act of murdering a cardinal. Paris erupted in outrage, with riots breaking out, and the radical municipal council, known as the 16, dedicating itself to the League's cause. Theologians aligned with the League declared Henri III excommunicated and morally deposed, arguing that his actions justified resistance. Yet, amid this fury, the core of the Guises' conspiracy, their plan to assassinate the king and seize power, remained unspoken, a secret preserved to maintain their image as Catholic heroes rather than would-be usurpers. The suppression of the plot was a strategic necessity. Had the full extent of the Guises' intentions become public, Henri III and the French crown would have had both legal and moral grounds to crush the House of Guise entirely, dismantling their influence and rallying moderate Catholics against them. Instead, the assassinations at Blois turned the Guises into martyrs, their deaths fueling sympathy among the Catholic masses and clergy. In Catholic strongholds across Europe, from London to Spain, pamphlets and books celebrated the Guises as national heroes, their lineage linked to Charlemagne to suggest a divine right to rule France. These narratives carefully avoided any mention of the assassination plot, instead framing the Guises as patriots defending the faith against a heretical succession. The silence was so effective that even later accounts, including vague references in modern sources, lack the specifics of the plot, the names, dates, and mechanisms of the conspiracy. What remains clear is that the Guises had planned regicide. Henri III struck first, and both sides collaborated in a tacit agreement to bury the truth. The assassinations at Blois did not quell the League's resistance. Charles, Duke of Mayenne, the younger brother of Henri and Louis, stepped into the leadership void, rallying the League's forces and continuing the fight against Henri III. Mayenne raised armies, held councils, and negotiated with Spain, proclaiming the lay kingship of Cardinal Charles de Bourbon as a rival to Navarre. Yet the original plot to assassinate the king and seize the throne was carefully tucked away, replaced by a narrative of holy war and resistance to Protestant heresy. This shift allowed the League to maintain its moral and political legitimacy, presenting their struggle as a defense of Catholicism rather than a naked grab for power. The Guises' ability to control this narrative was a testament to their political acumen, ensuring that their actions remained plausible to their supporters, even as the truth of their conspiracy faded into the shadows. The consequences of the Guises' failed plot reverberated beyond the immediate aftermath. On August 1st, 1589, Henri III himself fell victim to an assassination, stabbed by Jacques Clément, a fanatical Dominican friar incited by the League's fiery rhetoric. Clément's act, though not directly orchestrated by the Guises, was a product of the radicalized atmosphere they had fostered. Henri III's death marked the end of the Valois dynasty, paving the way for Henri of Navarre to ascend as Henri IV, the first Bourbon king of France. The Guises' original plot to seize the throne was further obscured by this dramatic turn, their ambitions recast as part of a broader Catholic resistance rather than a calculated bid for power. In the narratives crafted by Catholic propagandists, the Guises emerged as both victims and villains, martyrs of a holy cause rather than conspirators seeking to overthrow the monarchy. The Guises' plot to kill a king remains a silent shadow beneath the official history of the wars of religion. The House of Guise dared to envision regicide and revolution, but they never claimed it in their chronicles. Henri III's strike at Blois was portrayed as self-defense, a desperate act to preserve his throne against a dangerous rival. The Guise, in turn, were cast as Catholic heroes, their deaths a rallying cry for the faithful. The true nature of their conspiracy, though evident in the guarded correspondence and hushed meetings of their inner circle, was locked away in the silence of court records. This secrecy mirrors other moments in history, such as Napoleon's later execution of the Duke of Enghien, which was similarly glossed over by Bonapartist supporters to preserve a narrative of legitimacy. The Guises' plot, though buried, is confirmed by the events of December 1588, the suppression of evidence, and the subsequent silence that enveloped both the League and the Crown. The story of the Guise plot is a stark reminder of the power of secrecy in shaping history. When the stakes are as high as a throne, the most dangerous conspiracies are those that remain unspoken, their truths hidden behind a veil of silence. The Guise did not write their plan in pamphlets or proclaim it in manifestos. They wove it into the fabric of their actions, their alliances, and their ambitions. When Henri III struck, he ensured that the plot would die with its leaders, its details erased from the public record. Yet the consequences of their actions, the riots in Paris, the excommunication of a king, the assassination of Henri III himself, tell a story that cannot be fully suppressed. The Guise plot to kill a king was a moment when ambition collided with power, and silence became the final arbiter of history. Francis I's secret land exchange deal. In the intricate tapestry of 18th century European politics, where empires vied for dominance and dynasties navigated a web of alliances and rivalries, the story of Francis I of Lorraine stands as a testament to the delicate balance of sacrifice and ambition. Born in 1708, Francis Stephen became Duke of Lorraine in 1729, inheriting a small but strategically vital territory nestled between France, the Holy Roman Empire, and the Spanish Netherlands. Yet, by 1736, under immense pressure and with a heavy heart, Francis made a decision that would reshape his family's legacy forever. He secretly agreed to exchange his ancestral Duchy of Lorraine for the Grand Duchy of Tuscany. This clandestine deal, driven by the need to secure the vast Habsburg inheritance for his future wife, Maria Theresa, was a political maneuver so sensitive that it was concealed from his own nobles to prevent rebellion. The exchange was not merely a swap of territories. It was a dynastic gamble that transformed the fortunes of the House of Lorraine, positioning Francis at the heart of European power while surrendering the land of his birth. This is the story of a duke who traded his heritage for a place among the continent's greatest rulers, a tale of secrecy, strategy, and enduring legacy. Francis Stephen's ascension to the ducal throne of Lorraine came at a time when Europe was a chessboard of competing ambitions. Lorraine, though small, was a coveted prize due to its strategic location, serving as a buffer between the expanding ambitions of France under Louis XV and the sprawling domains of the Habsburgs. Francis, a young and capable ruler, was thrust into a world where dynastic politics demanded both foresight and flexibility. His life took a pivotal turn in 1736 when he married Maria Theresa, the eldest daughter of Emperor Charles VI and the designated heir to the vast Habsburg dominions. This union, formalized in February 1736, was not merely a marriage of love but a cornerstone of Habsburg strategy to secure their succession. However, France, a perennial rival of the Habsburgs, saw an opportunity to weaken its neighbor by targeting Lorraine. The French crown, eager to compensate Stanisław Leszczyński, the deposed King of Poland and father-in-law to Louis XV, demanded that Francis relinquish his duchy. Charles VI, the Holy Roman Emperor, made the terms stark. If Francis wished to marry Maria Theresa and secure her inheritance, he must surrender Lorraine. In return, he would receive the Grand Duchy of Tuscany upon the death of its childless ruler, Gian Gastone de' Medici, along with smaller territories in the Rhineland, and the honorary title of Marquis of Nomini, ensuring his continued influence within the Holy Roman Empire. The decision to exchange Lorraine for Tuscany was not a public proclamation, but a private understanding, sealed in whispers and imperial assurances. In early 1736, Francis agreed to this secret deal, a choice that required him to surrender the land he had grown up ruling, the ancestral heart of his family's identity. The arrangement was carefully orchestrated to avoid immediate backlash. Lorraine would pass to Stanislaw Leszczynski for his lifetime, after which it would be fully integrated into France. Francis, in turn, would assume control of Tuscany upon Gian Gastone's death in 1737, a move that positioned him as a ruling noble in a new domain while preserving his status within the Habsburg orbit. The deal was formalized in stages. A preliminary peace agreement in October 1735 set the groundwork. The secret pact was solidified in early 1736, and the instruments of cession were signed by January 1737. When Gian Gaston died in July 1737, Tuscany passed seamlessly into Francis's hands, while Lorraine began its transition under Stanislaus' stewardship, with its final absorption into France set for 1766 upon his death. The secrecy surrounding this exchange was not a mere precaution. It was a matter of survival. Lorraine's nobility, fiercely proud of their duchy's independence and heritage, would have viewed the surrender of their homeland to a foreign power as a betrayal. Francis, acutely aware of the potential for rebellion, kept the deal hidden from his court and subjects. The negotiations were conducted behind closed doors, known only to a select circle of Habsburg advisors, French diplomats, and imperial confidants. This cloak of secrecy was essential to prevent unrest during the transitional months, as any hint of the plan could have rallied opposition, undermined Francis's authority, and jeopardized his marriage alliance with Maria Theresa. The stakes were immense. The exchange was not just about land, but about securing the Habsburg succession, which faced challenges from rival powers during the looming war of the Austrian succession. By keeping the deal concealed, Francis ensured a smooth transition, avoiding the noble resentment that could have derailed his ambitions and the Habsburgs' broader strategy. In public, Francis maintained the title of Duke of Lorraine until March 1737, when Stanislaus officially took possession. Only then did Francis assume the role of Grand Duke of Tuscany, relocating to Florence to govern a new domain. Despite this shift, his heart remained tied to Lorraine, a land he would never rule again. The emotional weight of this sacrifice was profound. Lorraine was not just a territory, but the cradle of his family's identity, a symbol of their legacy. Yet Francis's vision extended beyond personal attachment. His marriage to Maria Theresa and the exchange of Lorraine for Tuscany were steps toward a greater destiny. The union produced 16 children, including the future emperors Joseph II and Leopold II, cementing the Habsburg-Lorraine dynasty as one of Europe's most enduring powers. By 1745, Francis achieved the pinnacle of his ascent, being elected Holy Roman Emperor as Francis I, a title that placed him at the summit of European nobility. He carried the imperial crown, but Lorraine, his ancestral home, was lost forever, integrated into France after Stanislaus' death in 1766. This exchange was far more than a pragmatic land swap. It was a dynastic maneuver of extraordinary significance. Francis traded his birthright for a place at the heart of European power, a decision that required both courage and calculation. The secrecy was not merely strategic, but a shield against the inevitable backlash from Lorraine's nobles, who might have rebelled against the loss of their duchy. The parallels to later dynasties, such as the Saxe-Coburgs, who concealed their German ties to bolster their legitimacy as British monarchs, are striking. Like those later royals, Francis navigated a delicate balance, sacrificing one form of identity to secure another. The deal allowed him to preserve his status as a ruling noble while aligning himself with the Habsburgs, whose dominions spanned Central Europe. It also ensured that Maria Theresa's claim to the Habsburg inheritance remained unchallenged, a critical factor in the face of the War of the Austrian Succession, which erupted in 1740 over her right to rule. The process of the exchange was a masterclass in diplomatic finesse. The preliminary peace of 1735, signed in Vienna, laid the groundwork for the negotiations, addressing the complex web of European alliances that surrounded the Polish succession crisis. Stanisław Leszczyński, deposed as King of Poland in 1733, was a key figure in these discussions, as France sought to secure his position while weakening the Habsburgs' hold on Lorraine. The secret agreement of 1736, finalized before Francis's marriage to Maria Theresa, ensured that the exchange would proceed without immediate public scrutiny. The formal instruments of cession, signed in January 1737, cemented the transfer, with Tuscany passing to Francis upon Gian Gaston's death in July of that year. To compensate for the loss of Lorraine, Charles VI granted Francis smaller territories in the Rhineland, including Falkenstein, Sauerwerden, and Zutphen, as well as the honorary title of Marquis of Nomeny, which allowed him to retain a seat at the imperial diets. These concessions were not mere tokens, but strategic moves to maintain Francis's status within the Holy Roman Empire, ensuring that he remained a player on the European stage. The secrecy of the deal was maintained with remarkable discipline. No public treaty explicitly mentioned the exchange until the Treaty of Vienna in 1738, which finalized the borders and formalized the transfer. Contemporary nobles and courtiers, whether out of loyalty, fear, or pragmatism, kept silent, preventing the kind of public outcry that could have sparked rebellion. The Lorraine nobility, though likely aware of rumors, were given no concrete evidence to rally against until the transition was complete. This silence was critical, as any open opposition could have destabilized the delicate negotiations surrounding Maria Theresa's succession. The Habsburg court, under Charles VI's direction, played a pivotal role in managing this secrecy, ensuring that the deal remained known only to a trusted inner circle. The French, equally invested in the arrangement, supported the discretion, as it allowed them to secure Lorraine without immediate resistance. The consequences of Francis's decision reverberated across Europe. Lorraine's integration into France under Stanisław's stewardship, and its eventual full absorption in 1766, marked the end of its independence as a duchy. Tuscany, under Francis's rule, became a Habsburg domain, a status it retained until the Napoleonic era disrupted European monarchies. The exchange also set the stage for the War of the Austrian Succession, as rival powers challenged Maria Theresa's claim to the Habsburg throne. Yet the success of Francis's sacrifice is evident in the enduring legacy of the Habsburg-Lorraine dynasty. His children, raised in the opulent courts of Vienna and Florence, shaped the future of Central Europe, with Joseph II and Leopold II leading the Holy Roman Empire through periods of reform and upheaval. Francis himself, as Holy Roman Emperor, became a central figure in European politics, his influence extending far beyond the borders of Lorraine or Tuscany. The secrecy surrounding the exchange mirrors other moments in dynastic history where strategic concessions were concealed to preserve legitimacy. The Saxe-Coburgs, for instance, downplayed their German heritage to solidify their position as British monarchs, much as Francis obscured the loss of Lorraine to secure his place within the Habsburg fold. Later accounts, including vague references in folklore or modern sources, often simplify the story, claiming Francis gave up Lorraine for Tuscany without delving into the motives, dates, or the critical role of secrecy. Historians, however, have pieced together the truth through Habsburg correspondence, diplomatic records, and the Treaty of Vienna, revealing the intricate planning behind the exchange. These documents show how Francis surrendered his ancestral land to secure a greater prize, a marriage that ensured the Habsburg succession, and a title that placed him among Europe's most powerful rulers. Marie Antoinette's secret affair with Axel von Fersen. In the opulent halls of Versailles during the 1780s, where gilded chandeliers cast a golden glow over the intrigues of the French court, a story unfolded that was as captivating as it was clandestine. At its center was Marie Antoinette, the Habsburg-Lorraine princess turned Queen of France, whose life was a delicate balance of royal duty and personal desire. Amid the political storms brewing beyond the palace walls, she harbored a secret so profound that it was shielded from even the most prying eyes of the court, a decades-long, emotionally charged relationship with Axel von Fersen, a dashing Swedish nobleman. This was no fleeting courtly flirtation or idle gossip. It was a deep, intense bond, concealed with meticulous care to protect the queen's reputation and the stability of the monarchy. The story of their forbidden love, veiled in coded letters and discreet alliances, mirrors the covert romances of earlier eras, such as Elizabeth I's rumored attachment to Robert Dudley, yet it stands apart for its intensity and the high stakes of revolutionary France. This is the tale of a queen and a count whose devotion was buried beneath layers of secrecy, a hidden undercurrent that shaped the margins of history. Marie Antoinette, born in 1755 as an Archduchess of Austria, arrived in France at the age of 14 to marry the future Louis XVI, a union designed to cement the alliance between the Habsburgs and the Bourbons. By the late 1770s, as she transitioned from an awkward dauphin to a confident queen, she found herself under immense pressure to embody the ideals of French monarchy while navigating the stifling etiquette of Versailles. It was during this period that she first encountered Axel von Fersen, a Swedish count whose charm, wealth, and cultural sophistication had already earned him a place in French military and diplomatic circles. Born in 1755, Fersen was a man of striking presence, tall, handsome, and imbued with the worldly polish of a seasoned traveler. Their initial meeting, likely at a masked ball or courtly gathering in 1774, sparked a connection that deepened over subsequent encounters. By the early 1780s, their friendship had evolved into something far more profound, a bond marked by an emotional intensity that neither could fully conceal, yet both knew must remain hidden. The evidence of their relationship lies in their correspondence, a series of letters that reveal a depth of feeling rare for the formal exchanges of the time. These letters, often written in coded language or invisible ink, were carefully crafted to evade the scrutiny of court spies and royal censors. Modern imaging technology, including X-ray scans, has since uncovered redacted sections of these letters, revealing words like beloved, adored, and madly. terms that betray a passion far beyond platonic affection. In one poignant missive, Fersen wrote, "I can tell you I love you. I have only time for that." These were not the words of a casual admirer, but of a man consumed by devotion, risking his reputation and safety to express his feelings. Marie Antoinette, in turn, responded with equal fervor, her letters bearing traces of her own longing, though carefully veiled to protect her position. The use of secret ink and coded phrases was a testament to the danger they faced. An open declaration of their bond would have been catastrophic, inviting accusations of adultery that could be deemed treasonous in a court where a queen's fidelity was a matter of state. The intensity of their relationship became particularly telling in 1784, a year that fueled speculation about the true nature of their bond. On March 27, 1785, Marie Antoinette gave birth to her second son, Louis Charles, later known as the Duke of Normandy. The timing of his birth, exactly 9 months after Fersen's return to France from a prolonged absence in 1783, raised eyebrows among historians and courtiers alike. During this period, Marie Antoinette had spent much of her time at the Petit Trianon, her private retreat on the grounds of Versailles, where she hosted a lavish fête for the visiting King of Sweden, Gustav III. Fersen, as a Swedish noble, was a prominent guest at these events, while Louis XVI, known for his disinterest in the Trianon's festivities, was notably absent. Courtiers later whispered that the conception of Louis Charles likely occurred at the Trianon, a place where Marie Antoinette enjoyed rare moments of freedom from the court's watchful eyes. While no definitive proof confirms Fersen as the father, the coincidence of his presence and the king's absence fueled speculation that their relationship may have crossed into physical intimacy, a possibility that historians continue to debate. Throughout the late 1780s, as France slid toward revolution, Fersen remained a steadfast presence in Marie Antoinette's life. His loyalty extended beyond personal affection to active support during the monarchy's darkest hours. In June 1791, as the French Revolution intensified, Fersen played a pivotal role in orchestrating the royal family's ill-fated flight to Varennes, a daring attempt to escape Paris and seek refuge with loyalist forces. Disguised as a coachman, he drove the royal carriage, risking his life to smuggle Marie Antoinette, Louis XV, and their children out of the capital under cover of darkness. The plan's failure, marked by the family's capture at Varennes, was a devastating blow, yet Fersen's commitment did not waver. In early 1792, he returned to Paris, defying the dangers of a city now hostile to the monarchy, to devise another escape plan. His actions were driven not only by political loyalty, but by a personal devotion that transcended the boundaries of duty. His letters from this period, often written in haste and coded for security, continued to express his unwavering affection, a testament to the depth of their bond. The secrecy surrounding their relationship was a carefully constructed shield, designed to protect both Marie Antoinette's reputation and the stability of the monarchy. At Versailles, where gossip was a currency as valuable as gold, the Queen and Fersen relied on discretion to avoid scandal. Court insiders referred to Marie Antoinette only as her, with a capital letter, a coded acknowledgement of her identity that avoided explicit mention. Fersen's sister, Sophie Piper, a confidant who knew the full extent of their relationship, played a crucial role in maintaining this secrecy. In one revealing letter, Sophie expressed hope that Marie Antoinette would never learn of Fersen's brief affair with Eleanor Sullivan, noting that it would cause the Queen great pain. This remark underscores the emotional stakes of their bond, as well as the lengths to which their inner circle went to protect it. Fersen himself took extraordinary measures to conceal their correspondence, censoring his own letters, and after his death ordering many to be burned to safeguard the queen's memory. The destruction of these documents was a deliberate act, ensuring that no damning evidence would surface to tarnish her legacy. The risks of their relationship were profound. For a queen, adultery was not a private matter, but a political crime, potentially punishable by death. The French monarchy, already weakened by financial crises and growing revolutionary fervor, could ill afford a scandal that would undermine its legitimacy. Marie Antoinette, as a foreign-born queen from the Habsburg dynasty, was already a target of criticism, vilified as l'Autrichienne, the Austrian woman, by those who questioned her loyalty to France. An exposed affair with a Swedish nobleman would have provided her enemies with ammunition to accuse her of treason, further destabilizing the crown. The Catholic Church, a powerful force in French politics, would have condemned such a liaison, and papal censure could have isolated the monarchy from its traditional allies. Yet despite these dangers, Marie Antoinette and Fersen persisted, their devotion sustained by a shared understanding that their love must remain invisible to the world. As the French Revolution engulfed France, Fersen's role became even more critical. He smuggled secret messages to the Queen, financed escape plots, and even contributed to the drafting of the Brunswick Manifesto in 1792, a declaration by foreign powers threatening war if harm came to the royal family. His actions were driven by a passion so profound that he confided to his sister that he might never marry, as the only woman he truly loved was already bound to another. This sentiment, expressed in the midst of revolutionary chaos, reveals the depth of his commitment to Marie Antoinette, a commitment that transcended the constraints of their respective roles. Their letters from this period, often written under the shadow of impending disaster, bear the weight of their shared fears and hopes. One of Marie Antoinette's final letters to Fersen, sent before her imprisonment, carried her seal and the poignant words, "All things lead me towards you," a testament to the enduring pull of their bond. The revolution's relentless march brought tragedy to both. In October 1793, Marie Antoinette faced the guillotine, her execution a stark symbol of the monarchy's collapse. Her final months were marked by isolation and suffering, yet her thoughts remained with Fersen, as evidenced by the letters she sent him in secret. Fersen, devastated by her death, fled France, returning to Sweden to continue his diplomatic career. His own end came in 1810, when a mob in Stockholm, fueled by rumors of his involvement in the death of a Swedish prince, beat him to death in a brutal act of violence. The tragedy of their star-crossed love, separated by revolution and sealed by death, transformed their story into a legend, a tale of devotion that endured despite the efforts to erase it. The concealment of their relationship was a strategic necessity, designed to protect the monarchy and preserve Marie Antoinette's legacy. The French court, with its intricate web of alliances and rivalries, was a place where secrets were both a weapon and a shield. By maintaining silence, Marie Antoinette and Fersen ensured that their bond did not become a public scandal that could hasten the monarchy's downfall. The destruction of their letters, the use of coded language, and the discretion of confidants like Sophie Piper all served to bury the truth beneath layers of propriety. Yet the traces of their love could not be entirely erased. Historians armed with modern technology have decrypted their correspondence, uncovering redacted passages that reveal the intensity of their feelings. X-ray scans of Marie Antoinette's letters have exposed words like madly and beloved, written in her own hand, offering a glimpse into a passion that was invisible to her contemporaries. These discoveries, combined with timelines of their meetings and Fersen's risky actions during the Revolution, confirm the depth of their relationship, even if definitive proof of physical consummation remains elusive. The story of Marie Antoinette and Axel von Fersen is more than a romantic interlude. It is a profound narrative of love constrained by the demands of power and politics. Their relationship, sustained through coded letters, clandestine meetings, and daring escape attempts, was a secret kept from a court that thrived on gossip and a nation on the brink of revolution. The parallels to other hidden romances, such as Elizabeth I's rumored attachment to Robert Dudley, highlight the universal challenges faced by royal women whose personal desires clashed with their public roles. Yet Marie Antoinette's story stands out for its intensity and the high stakes of revolutionary France, where a queen's fidelity was a matter of state security. The deliberate concealment of their bond, orchestrated by both the queen and her confidants, ensured that it remained a whisper in the corridors of Versailles, a truth known only to a select few. And that's all for today's video. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up, let us know your thoughts in the comments section, and subscribe so you won't miss out on future uploads. See you next time.